Hey everybody, I am joined right now by the team making up Our Heroes Rock, the new Kickstarter project that's going to bring some light, celebrate some Black history heroes. I have Big E, WWE Intercontinental Champion Andreas Hale, who is the senior editor of combat sports at Sporting News. You can also catch him on the Wrestling with Stereotypes podcast, and Jonathan Davenport, a graphic artist and narrative designer. How you guys doing today?
Good.
Doing great. Good intro.
Can't complain.
I tried to do Biggie some justice on that intro. It's
almost
there.
Appreciate that. It's much appreciated.
So, you guys just launched this project not too long ago. You want to educate people and celebrate Black history heroes. One of the points in the Kickstarter project is you want to celebrate some of the lesser known people, but bigger picture, what's the overall goal with this project? You have your plan for episode 1, but what do you want to do, beyond that?
I think for us, we've talked about this being a series, mostly because there are so many stories beyond just Ruby Bridges. And I think back to when I first had the conversation with Jonathan, and we were talking about how many people we wanted to put on gear when this first started as a gear concept, and it went from 3 to 6 to 11 to 17 very quickly, and it could have gone to 50 if we had room on the gear. There's so many of these stories, and that's why we envision this being a series. And I think there's so many ways to tell these stories. And one of the big things for us is we don't want this to feel pedantic and heavy-handed. We want this to be engaging and fun. And I think we can do that with letting each story breathe and finding ways to use elements of entertainment. But like I said, man, there's just so many stories to tell. And that's why we want this to really just kind of be, it's a pilot to show what this can really be and how we can really breathe life into each one of these stories.
Yeah, and speaking to your question about big picture, what do we see? We would love if this is the kind of project that sort of lives beyond us, where people in the future, generations down, if they have a class where they're sitting around talking about heroes from Black history or heroes from women history, or because we want to expand the project into like all kinds of corners, where they remember like, hey, this is just like that cartoon we saw growing up. Remember that? I still have that jingle in my head. I still remember these facts from this song that I haven't been able to get out of my head for 30 years. And now my kids are singing it. So that's the kind of effect we'd love for this project to have.
Yeah, and furthermore, when we talk about living beyond our kids' lives, we're also thinking of it as how do we bring people together? And the only way you can bring people together is by storytelling, so people can understand each other's past history and cultural differences. I say it all the time, being colorblind is nonsense. You got to understand the people of the past that came before you, that paved the way. It can't just be about Martin Luther King. It can't just be about Malcolm X. There are so many people out here that our kids don't know about. And the three of us, as Black men growing up in America, we didn't know about these heroes until we were, some of us were college educated. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't be like that. So big picture is hopefully that we're inspiring the next group of storytellers to write in these history books. So my 3rd grade class isn't just talking about the French-American War. We're talking about our heroes of different cultures, various backgrounds, regardless of sexual orientation, gender, race, doesn't matter. We need to learn about American history.
That's an important point, and it's something I thought of, when I'm thinking back of stuff I learned in school. It was very, compartmentalized almost, where they'd be like, okay, here's Martin Luther King, here's what Rosa Parks did, and then we're going to skip ahead to like Reaganomics, and there's a bigger problem to address, like as far as the way people are taught. But 2 people I noticed on the poster were Rosa Parks, and John Lewis was on the poster too. And I didn't know who he was until David Letterman had him on his Netflix series where they walked across the bridge together. And I was just blown away that, somebody who has such the story he told is just insane to me, that it's not being taught to people. And I think you guys are taking the right approach, where if it's not being taught in school, you're giving kids especially an easy way to digest it and understand it. Like my kids are just finished up learning about Black history in school, and it was kind of like, I want to not only have them the opportunity to learn about it, but I kind of want to be able to give them some answers too, because I didn't learn any of it. So, is it, I know that the concept is, it's animation, it's storytelling, there's music involved, so it's very easy to get them involved. But are you taking the approach where, you want it to be layered storytelling where it is easy for a kid to understand, but it's also deep enough for adults to want to sit down and enjoy?
For sure. That's something that we definitely talked about as well. Our target age group is probably going to skew towards that 6 to 10, 11 range. But also, we want parents to not be like, oh, this is this one thing my kid watches and I can't stand because it's just real childish. And that's, I kind of think too of, like, for me, I think of, and this isn't the best bet because I don't have kids, but I think of like a Shrek where it's designed for kids, but as an older person, I still really enjoy it. And I love that element of it. And that's what we hope, that our project has that same kind of effect, that we can, even though it's targeted for younger people, that also parents will want to sit down and watch it and it'll be fun and engaging. And that's our hope. And I think that's such an easy way to teach, because if I say, hey, child, sit down and watch this educational piece, there isn't the same desire. But when you jump in and you see this robot with this big personality and this futuristic museum, this Hall of Heroes that Johnny has designed, and when you engage in this world, and we have Rhapsody, who is one of the best rappers on the planet, a 2-time Grammy nominee. When you have all these elements, you have great music, it's fun and engaging. When I just see the art alone and I put aside the historical context and the story of Ruby Bridges, when I just see the art, I'm engaged. Even though I know I'm part of this project and it's mine, there's something to me that just sucks you in. And that's our hope. And I've used this metaphor and I've said it many times, so the boys are tired of hearing it. But what I think of is when you were a kid and your parents had the applesauce, and they would take your medicine and your vitamins and they would crush up the medicine and vitamins, and then they would put in the applesauce and mix it all around, and you'd have this applesauce and you'd have this delicious applesauce and you'd enjoy it and you skip about and go on your merry way because it was just applesauce. It was incredible. But you left with the vitamins, you left with the nutrients you needed. And that's what we want from this project. Is it's applesauce. It's supposed to taste good. It's supposed to be entertaining. It's supposed to be something that you enjoy. You have this jingle in your head and you can't wait to watch another episode. But you walk away and you might not have even realized that you now know that Ruby Bridges in 1960 integrated an all-white school in New Orleans. These are things that just stuck in your head. You didn't seek to learn this information, but it's in your head, and that's what we hope. And I'm rambling, but that's me. That's my perspective.
You're preaching to the choir. I feel like I'm trying to edit myself down, but
it's great. We also learned that when E was younger and he would get applesauce, he would skip away. We just learned that now.
Now we know.
I'm sure everybody's going to have their own guess, but what are the visual inspirations? Like Schoolhouse Rock seems to be an obvious one. I kind of thought of Steven Universe, and you just brought up the Hall of Heroes. So I'm thinking, there's like a Justice League, like a larger than life aspect to it. But like you guys alluded to, it's adult, but it's easily digestible for kids. So it's not going to be over their heads. Like, what kind of visual cues are you going to?
No, man, you're killing it. You nailed it 100%. So obviously there's the Schoolhouse Rock element because we need this to feel generational. So like there's a little taste of nostalgia for anyone who grew up with Schoolhouse Rock, with that 70s style art with like the thicker lines and the flatter colors. Like there's not a lot of shading in that style. So we sort of incorporated that, but of course, it's a 3D project. So we're going through this really neat process of watching the 3D art team adapt that character style into a 3D space while still trying to maintain the charm of the 2D art. So that's neat. But also, that Steven Universe sort of Cal art style that got really popular in the early 2000s. There's touches of that here and there, not a ton, but there's a little bit. And you can't help who your influences are, because like that whole 90s Batman animated series, WB house art style. I'm super influenced by that. Like I love, what I love about that style is it's very simple character design with very clean lines, but there's so much energy and personality in the characters. They can get so much out of so little. So while a lot of the human characters have that 70s art style, all the robotic stuff and a lot of the settings are more influenced from 90s and 2000s on. So we're trying to make it so that there's a little something for everyone. And if you ever had some kind of cartoon that you loved and there was some kind of element in that DNA, some of that is in Our Heroes Rock in some way. So the fact that you cued on those things tells me we're maybe going in the right direction.
I didn't pick up on the you're talking about like the Bruce Timm stuff, right? From
Bruce Timm, yeah.
So that always appealed to me because it seemed like it was very like 1940s, 1950s, but it also felt timeless at the same time.
Yeah,
And
that's
I feel like
exactly
that's why that worked. And I think you guys are, you know, you're doing a good approach, because it has to feel timeless, because even though it is a past story, like you're showing like the Hall of Heroes, it's very futuristic. You want people to approach it that way, where it's not just, okay, this is history. It should be part of, I mean, if I'm not getting too big picture, like, you know, you want it to be part of the way we learn in the future.
absolutely. And there's a little bit of that in the storytelling as well, because you know, a lot of the story, most of it will take place in the Hall of Heroes, which is very futuristic. But what's the world outside? Like, we haven't hinted to that at all. We have like some ideas that we're talking about, but we want it to feel like there's this pocket in time where you can explore this one area and you can sort of revisit all these different eras. But what's this era that we're currently living in the story? And that's like kind of part of the mystery that we're hoping to intrigue people with.
Who are some of the other names, like, if it's not giving away too much, like who do you really want to explore that, you know, maybe is somebody that you still haven't learned about? Like Andreas talked about not knowing stuff until you're perhaps, you know, college age. So is there anybody on the list that you're like really looking forward to, hope that you get a chance to, whether it's Jonathan draw or, you know, Biggie talk about, you know, anything like that come to mind?
Man, that's a good question, because there's so many people, and we're just kind of scratching the surface, because you know we want to see how this one goes, obviously. But you know, there's even somebody like Harriet Tubman is somebody that a lot of kids have no clue what the Underground Railroad is, and we'd like to explore those things. Or somebody like Marcus Garvey. There's so many people, and I don't even know where to start. But you guys will start seeing. I mean, you've seen some of the images that have been on Eve's Ring attire. You've seen the poster. That is a hint, but there are so many more, and we just can't give it away yet.
How far, like, I know the story kind of goes, you wanted to work on some ring gear, and kind of it went from there to the project we're talking about now. But like, as far as like timing, how far back does this go? Like, how long have you guys been talking about it? Because it seems like it wasn't just, oh yeah, this would be cool, we need a different medium for it. It seems like it's been something that's continually snowballed for, you know, whether it's months or even longer.
Yeah, well, the genesis of this comes from the wake of George Floyd's murder, and I remember it being something that hit me very heavily. The first like death of someone that I had never met, did not know, but I could not stop thinking about. And an element of that was this pandemic. I had no real escape. I was in my house every day. I wasn't catching a flight. I wasn't on the road working 5 shows a week. I was home, and I had a lot of time to sit and think with it. And Andreas was a massive help. He was on our podcast, and we just, you know, we talked it out. And that for me was a lot of it was therapy, just having these conversations and being able to talk with other Black men and my friends and my family members about what we go through, about dealing with police harassment and brutality and the fear. I'm not a parent, but so many, you know, Kofi and Woods, they have young Black kids, and the conversations that they have to have with their Black sons about how to deal with police. Like, as little kids, like, when do you have this talk? You know, the talk for them isn't necessarily the birds and the bees. It's what do you do when you're pulled over by a police officer? And that's frightening when you think about them, as, you know, their kids are not very old, at 5 and 6, and they're having to think, like, when do we have these conversations? So for me, we had the conversation with Andreas, and I kept thinking, I don't know how to change this. I don't know how to topple systemic racism. I don't know how to fundamentally change this thing that is so ingrained in our society and in our country, but I don't want to feel helpless. I can do something. I may not be the biggest voice in entertainment, but I do have a platform. There are people who know who I am, who watch me, and we've been able to use our gear, thankfully, through Johnny, to express our love for comics and anime and video games. Why don't we use gear to express our desire to empathize with people who look like us, our desire to say something, our desire to help educate people, to let them know that Black people are such a massive part of the fabric of this country. And that's where it really started. So right after the murder of George Floyd is when all these conversations started coming up in me. This started really bubbling, the conversation with Jonathan, the podcast conversation with Andreas. Then it became the wrestling gear, and it just went from there. And I really feel like in many ways, the pandemic changed my life, and the murder of George Floyd changed my life because it kickstarted in me this real need to give back. I've been incredibly blessed. I'm so fortunate to be at the position I am in my life. I've been with WWE since 2009. I live a charmed life, and I'm incredibly grateful. And the reason I'm here is because I had so many people along the way bless me or lift me up, whether it was directly or indirectly. And if I can do that for others, I feel like in many ways that is my debt. That is my rent for being here on this earth. That is my payment for this life. And I feel like education is a big part of that. I feel like letting people know that we are much more than just Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. We are much more than the month of February. That's one reason behind the name, Our Heroes. This is not to be cornered off and sectioned off for Black people only. These stories are your stories. They are our stories because they build the fabric of this country and of our history. And I think when you learn about these people as a non-Black person, you become more empathetic, you become more understanding. I think as a young Black kid, you take some pride in knowing that we were more than just slaves, that we were more than just MLK, but that we were inventors, we were artists, that we struggled, that we loved. The whole breadth and depth of the Black experience is beautiful, and it's so much greater than so many of us realize.
Hopefully we start seeing some of that change that you're talking about, but I would say at the very least, you're opening the door for people to talk about it. And I think that's something that people need to realize, whether it's ring gear, whether it's a direct message, like, laid out and explained, or if it's something subtle, at least people are talking about it. And I hope that means, like you said, like, African American people, they can learn more about their history, Caucasians or anybody else, just at least learn something and try to make a positive change, because I think everybody feels like, oh yeah, I want to change, but what do I do? So, can't do anything but applaud you for, at least taking the effort. And I think it's really like you're seeing right now that it's taking off. Like, you guys smashed the goal almost immediately. You have some new stretch goals, perks. You're sitting just under $100,000 and you still have a month left. So, anybody that wants to check it out, do some good, back the project, you just go on Kickstarter, search Our Heroes Rock. There's a ton of information there. I really hope you guys hit your goals, because I already supported it like day one. And like I said, I want to learn more about it, and I hope people make the effort to do it, because it's, it's a fun way of having a bigger conversation.
I appreciate that, Bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
we really do. And I mean, one last thing is, like, by supporting us, it's like you're taking part in what we're doing, right? So it's like we're trying to, in some ways, alter the future and how things are digested and consumed. And by you supporting us and you getting a T-shirt, or you getting some enamel pins, or you getting this incredible Mondo poster, or whatever it is that however you back us, we don't care. We just want you to be a part of it, because our biggest fear in the beginning, and some people can't believe it, but the three of us, we talk every day, multiple times. And we were worried that maybe people wouldn't want to back this because they feel like it's too niche. They would think that, oh, I don't want to learn about Black history through a cartoon and some hip hop music. And now that we found out that people are actually supporting us, it says that this country is ready to change. America's ready to change. And if we can do just our little small part and we see that people can support us, you don't know what kind of ramifications that can have on the future and our next generation and our kids, and so on and so forth. And even if you're older, in your 40s or your 50s, maybe you're going to learn something that makes you go, you know what, I didn't know that before, and I can teach my kids this as well. So we're just trying to teach a more tolerant America and a country that supports everybody, because Lord knows 2020 was a bitch. And we don't want to see this anymore. Like we want to see people unite and get together, because we've all had to deal with the pandemic, because that was universal. We don't need these nonsensical problems where people fear each other because of the color of their skin or their gender or their sexuality. We all need to come together, and in doing so, we need to learn our stories first.
I usually end any call I do with what match recommendations. It pretty much started as a pandemic playlist where nobody was sure what was going on last year. It's almost like a year to the day since I started doing it. But are there any I'll pose the question to each of you, but are there any matches in the past year that you're really proud of, whether it's Big E that you were in, or a coworker was in, or to the three of you, any that you just watched that, you really were impressed by or would recommend that somebody goes out and gives it a second chance?
You first.
I need some time to think. I wanted y'all to go first.
Look, man, I'm just gonna, because he's on this call, I have to do this, because the feud with Sheamus and the match, was it the street fight? The fact that we got to see E in a different light, where people, prior to this, we had the whole Miz thing where him, you got to be more serious, and we saw this match, and people were so entertained by it, and saw a side of E that some people might have forgot. The man could be vicious when it comes down to it. He can be fun, but that's kind of like, that's Black people, right? We're not always angry. We can have fun. We can kick your ass too. So I've watched that match a few times, not just because he's my friend, it's because it felt like a true coming out party in a sense. So that is a match I'll recommend immediately.
I should have gone first, because I was actually thinking that same match.
I win.
You do. But just to echo what you said, all the same reasons. I'm a big New Day fan, as you can probably imagine, and by extension, I'm a humongous Big E fan. I gotta tell you, just E, you can mute this because I know you hate hearing good things about yourself. Just go skip around, have some applesauce, and skip around and come back around the block. But I'd tell you this too. Like, I love what a well-rounded performer he is. I think you don't see that a lot, because he's like, yes, he's big, and yes, he's a badass, but he also has fun, but not always, and don't cross him. And he can be on the side of the ring, like in a cable knit sweater, like chilling out on the side. Meanwhile, chaos is brewing around him, and he can be part of it, or he can, like, he's a generous performer. Like, he can, like, have the spotlight, but he can pass it to others too. I'm a huge fan of all of his in-ring performances, but that one in particular, that was one where, I like the entertainment of it. And that was a very entertaining story. It was fun. I liked that it was like, there's a little bit of energy that we've kind of lost without the audience. So like, anytime you can break out of those boundaries and like move around a lot, and have a mobile show, that's exciting to me. And I know that I'm watching a good match when like my 11-year-old girl is with me, and I'm like, oh no, oh geez, no, oh, that man is bleeding. I have to pull her away. So that was epic for me. That was an epic match.
Well, I clearly paid them to say that, so I appreciate that. I will actually go with Walter and Dragunov. That they had that super violent NXT UK match. Just, my God, did they beat the hell out of each other. That was one that I really remember. So let's go with that one. They were left like black and blue afterwards. It was just unique for me. You don't really see. I like in this era where the style tends to be really athletic, and there's a lot of movement, and you have 300-pound guys who do a lot of dives. I like that. That was just a fight. It was just an aggressive, not very pretty fight. So let's go with Walter and Dragunov for me.
You could pretty much mention any match that Walter's in, and I'm going to agree with you, but that one was just like above and beyond, just, awesome fight to watch. Again, I thank you for all of your match picks. I look forward to seeing what you have next in the ring. I know you have your hands full with Apollo Crews. We'll wait and see what happens there. I know you're making your comeback this week. But in the meantime, I hope everybody that watched or listened or, check out the Kickstarter. It's Our Heroes Rock. These guys have been more than generous with their time and talked about what the project is, what they hope to get out of it. I can't wait to see what you have in store with the pilot, and, hope you reach your goal. And thanks for your time and have a good night.
All right.
Thanks, Bill.
appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it, man, for real.